Let's make the notice of intent easy. This is CHUV's form, which makes it convenient and helps you follow all of the things that are required in Code 1881C2, which is the private homeschooling exemption. We've referred to exemption at least once now, and now we're going to talk about compulsory age. So briefly, let me say that the reason that you have to exercise an exemption like the private homeschooling exemption, which is C2, is because of compulsory attendance laws. So in the state of West Virginia, as in all other states, children of certain ages are required to go to public school unless they meet the requirements of certain exemptions, which have been hard won and put into the law in the various states. For West Virginia, this is one of the exemptions, the one that CHUV exists to protect and to help people know how to exercise. So if you are homeschooling, you are in private homeschooling, particularly, you're homeschooling under 1881C2, possibly C1, but probably C2. And this is the notice of intent that would be necessary for C2. And you need to know then whether your child is of compulsory age. If they're not of compulsory age, then the exemption is not necessary because your child is not required to go to public school at that age. You can homeschool a child who's not yet of compulsory age any way that you'd like without having to turn in this notice. So it is possible for a child who has not yet become of compulsory age to be in first grade or kindergarten as a homeschooler and not be required to do any of this. And that would only be because they are not yet of compulsory age. Again, how do you know if your children are of compulsory age? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a moment as we look at the flow chart you can also find in your starter pack. But right now, let's assume that your children are of compulsory age, and therefore you need the name, address, and age of all children listed on the notice of intent. Now let's look down here at what you are pledging legally to do. You are assuring, whoever signs down here is assuring that the children listed above will receive instruction in reading, language, mathematics, science, and social studies. Now, just quickly, let's talk a little bit about each of those subjects. Reading would be literally learning to read, but it would also include things like reading comprehension and literature. Language is all of the language arts, so it would include things like vocabulary, sentence mechanics, capitalization, sentence structure. Those types of things would be under language arts. Mathematics is probably pretty self-explanatory. Numbers, their meanings, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions, decimals, all the way up through trigonometry, possibly calculus. All of that, of course, would be in math. So even though I'm listing all of those math possibilities, that does not mean that you're making a commitment to teach all of that, but you are making a commitment that this year your child will have instruction in the appropriate math for them. It's possible that calculus will never be appropriate for where your child is headed, so you're not making a commitment to do something like that, but you are making a commitment for them to have math instruction this coming year. Science, that would include geology, the study of rocks, astronomy, the study of sky and everything in it, origins, the study of how things came to be, botany, the study of plants, biology, the study of life. All of those different kinds of sciences can be included in the science instruction that you would provide. Again, it would be the science that's appropriate for your child for this particular year. And social studies is social sciences. It also includes the traditional history and geography. And I'd like to think that homeschoolers actually study and understand history and geography better than other students. And then later, they oftentimes study government and civics and become excellent citizens and improve the electorate. But at any rate, those are some of the things that would be involved in those subject areas. And if you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't really think I understand everything that would be under all of those subjects for each of the different grade levels, or even just the grade level that you're getting ready to teach, no problem. because chances are the curriculum that you choose will just hand that to you on a silver platter. In fact, if you were to talk to teachers in public or private schools, they would agree with you that they can't remember everything that's involved in each of these subjects, but they too depend on the curriculum to help them know what their student needs to learn. So I'm just emphasizing that your children need instruction in all 5 subjects and that you are indeed verifying by signing that you will homeschool them. If you're not homeschooling them and providing this instruction, then you're actually not following the exemptions requirements. You would not actually be a real homeschooler. Instead, you would be a truant. You're also committing to assess him or her or them annually. So every year you have to do an assessment. We will talk about that later as well. There are 4 assessment options. And although we don't go into a lot of detail in this because assessment is something that you will do at the end of the year, there's lots of information on the chuv.org website. Now, this notice holds firm until and unless you stop homeschooling or you move away from the county that's receiving this notice. And if you would do either of those things, if you would stop home instruction for any reason, decide to enroll in school, or your child graduates, 2 examples, then you would turn in a notice of termination of home instruction. And you won't find one of those in your starter pack, but you will find one of those at chuv.org under resources and then forms. If you move from this county, then you need to let this county know that you're no longer homeschooling there and turn in a notice of intent for the county to which you have moved. And then the last thing is that the person instructing must provide evidence of a high school credential. So it is illegal in West Virginia to homeschool unless you have a high school credential. You've graduated from high school or you have a GED, which would be the equivalent task test passed, or a post-secondary degree, of course, would indicate that you have even gone further than high school. So any of those things are legal to turn in. Copy of that credential must be included with your notice of intent. So that is basically the notice of intent. Now let's take a look at how you can tell if your child is of compulsory age. So CHIV has produced this flowchart to make it easy. This is pertinent to West Virginia only. Other states have different definitions of compulsory age. But in the state of West Virginia, your child becomes of compulsory age when they're 6 prior to July 1st, or if they've ever been enrolled in a publicly funded 5-year-old kindergarten. So it says, or will he be? And that is if you are looking, let's say in the spring and considering whether you're going to homeschool that fall. So each school year commences in the fall, just like for regular school, and ends in the spring. So you have to decide whether your child has reached compulsory age for each school year that begins in the fall. If you're pulling your child out of public school, then your child is of compulsory age because obviously they have been enrolled in a publicly supported school. If you're pulling your child out of private school, then you still probably would need to look at that only if you're pulling them out of kindergarten. Okay, so was your child 6 prior to July 1st? On July 1st, are they already 6 years old? If yes, then your child has reached compulsory age. And in order to homeschool, you have to follow this or some other exemption. To follow the homeschool exemption, you will need a notice of intent on file at your county office before you start homeschooling. And you will need to assess every year that you homeschool. What if your child was not 6? They're 5 years old on July 1st. That would include a child who's going to be 6 on July 2nd or August 1st. So your child might be 6 prior to this fall, but if they're not 6 on July 1st, then we're here at the no. If they are not 6 prior to July 1st, have they ever been enrolled in a publicly supported preschool or kindergarten? Not private school, but public school. If they have never been enrolled in a preschool or kindergarten, then they're not of compulsory age yet, and you can homeschool this year if you'd like, without turning in a notice of intent and without doing an assessment. Now, there is a caveat here in the light gray. If you are homeschooling kindergarten and you think you might enroll your child in a public first grade next year, then it might be prudent to go ahead and turn in a notice and do an assessment so that you have those records on file, because the school system may want to see those records and probably will in order to enroll your child in first grade rather than making them repeat kindergarten. However, if you're not planning to put your child back in school for first grade, you know that for sure, then there is no reason to do any of this. You're just fine. And what you do in kindergarten without notice of intent will be just as credible for your records as not doing that. So again, the only reason you really would need to do that or want to do that is if there's any possibility of enrolling in public school for first grade. So what if you have enrolled in a publicly supported preschool or kindergarten? Then was it preschool or was it kindergarten? Because preschool doesn't count. So if it was preschool, your child is still not of compulsory age. But if you enrolled, not just attended, but you just ever enrolled in a publicly funded kindergarten program, then even if your child is not 6, you still have reached compulsory age, and you will need to exercise the exemption by using a notice of intent prior to homeschooling. If you have any questions, there's more information at shuv.org, or you can ask us questions by emailing shuv@shuv.org, CHEWV @CHEWV.org.